Today we continue our series, our new series on the law and you. And we are delighted to have with us a very young lawyer who is the assistant professor of law at the Algonquin Law College. And her name is Ms. Shruti Kamat Dalal. Welcome, Ms. Shruti. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you.
Now, today we are going to discuss about the right to education.
Yes.
Why and how did all this begin? Can you tell us a little bit more, please?
Yes. Right to Education Act is a 2009 act and it was brought into force on 1st of April 2010. Now, this Right to Education Act basically focuses on holistic development of child. It mentions about free and compulsory education for a specific age group, that is from 6 to 14 years. It focuses on child-friendly schools. It also mentions about atmosphere, creating an atmosphere which will be free from fear, trauma, anxiety, and where there would be overall development of a child. So basically, this is the objective or the purpose or aim of Right to Education Act.
So basically, it covers a lot of ground.
Yes, yes.
You mentioned about that it should develop the child well.
Yes.
Now, this well business is what? What is well?
It's not only the intellectual ability or the cognitive faculty of a child which has to be developed, but it also mentions about the physical development. It also specifies about the development of a child, whereupon a child will be in a position to face anything and everything. So the focus is not just on the quantity education, but it is also on the quality education.
Right.
Now, only thing whether we are able to achieve that goal or not, that has to be seen.
Well, at least it has got a vision.
Yes, yes,
So,
of course. It is.
now tell me, it says the right to education. Right to whom? Means, does it cover all the children in our country, or is it to specific areas of children? What is it?
Yes. Now, this right to education is for a specific age group, which shall be free and compulsory, and the age group is from 6 to 14 years only, which is referred to as an education at the elementary stage.
Okay. Now, you say 6 to 14, but nowadays, our children go to this pre-primary or whatever at the age of 3. So, what about children who are poor and cannot go to these primary schools or pre-primary schools? What do they do? Just sit at home?
This particular act mentions only about an age group from 6 to 14 years. But when we talk about an age group which is 0 to 6 years, that is below 6 years, however, the act, though it is silent on this particular aspect, but if the schools would want to adopt a system whereupon it would be free and compulsory education below the age group of 6 years, then the schools can do it. But it's up to their wish.
So, as far as the law is concerned, it is only from 6 to 14.
Yes.
If the schools want to do something, it's okay. But has the state government got anything to do with this?
No.
Nothing.
The state government, there is a provision relating to this in the act, but so far this act only focuses on free and compulsory education for 6 to 14 years.
Okay, right. And what would you say about the situation where a child is poor, but the parents are ignorant? They do not know how to get into the school system, as it were. Because any school has to take a certain percentage, am I right?
Correct. Very good question. Actually, we have something which is referred to as monitoring bodies or stakeholders under this particular act. For instance, it's a duty that is cast on the government, the local authority under the state to sensitize and create awareness amongst the masses relating to this particular act. Okay. So there has to be a door-to-door campaign, or else the school monitoring agencies or committees, just like your Parents Teachers Association, have to create awareness about this particular act relating to free and compulsory education. And one more thing which I would like to emphasize, which is a very good point under this particular act, is relating to poor children. So in case if the annual income of the parents or the guardians is less than 1 lakh, then they get the quota under reservation, which is 25% reservation in private schools and specified category schools, which is free of cost.
All right, okay. So, as I said earlier, if a child, the parent of the child is illiterate, and there is a law that says that Even private schools can take up to 25% of these kind of children. How do they approach the authority, the school authority, to say my child is poor, I can't afford it, but I need a seat here?
Yes. Now, when it comes up to 25% reservation, the private schools or the specified category schools, as per the provisions which is there under Right to Education Act, have to admit such particular category, provided the annual income of the parents or the guardians of the child is less than 1 lakh. So there has to be a document or a certificate to that particular extent that the annual income is less than 1 lakh, which has to be produced. But however, there cannot be a kind of a screening procedure for these children.
Okay.
Or else there cannot be something where you refer to as an extra additional contribution or payment, which refers to donation or capitation fee, which you can grab from these children or from the parents at the time of admission. Now, of course, as you mentioned, there will be a difficulty to a certain extent whereupon the parents communicate this fact to the school authorities, but the school authorities cannot discriminate or distinguish amongst the children belonging to a rich category or a poor category. So in case if I want to avail of the facility of education, it is open to all. Right. So it's not because the rich only get education or admission in this particular school. That is nothing like that under Right to Education. So no discrimination, no distinction.
Okay, there are 2 points you indicated. One is that there is no admission test.
Yes.
Okay, so the child, the moment...
There is no screening procedure.
No, that means admission
Yes.
test or whatever. That means at the age of 6, if the child comes there and says, I need admission, the principal just has to take that child.
Now, in this case, the judgment, the Supreme Court has made it clear, in case if the school wants to adopt a specific procedure relating to admission of a child, it can adopt. But there cannot be a kind of an interview technique with a child or with a parent saying that your parents are who, they belong to which particular designation, which community, they are on which position, which post, you are from which particular sect, nothing that way.
Okay.
So if they categorize under the merit list with the procedure that is adopted by that particular school, it is fine. But all of a sudden, a student who doesn't secure that particular merit ranking and he gets an admission, that is not fair. Which is not permitted by the Act.
And therefore, there is no capitation fee.
Yes.
Or any of those fees which they normally take for
Yes.
for whatever reason.
Even a birth certificate, in case if a child doesn't have, then this will not be a hurdle for a child not to get admission in a school.
Even a birth certificate?
Even a birth certificate. So there cannot be a question because there's a recent circular that is issued by the Directorate of Education, which says that you're not supposed to ask a child whether you have a father, you have a mother, what is the name of your father, what is the name of your mother. Even if the child is ignorant or doesn't want to disclose, that will not be a hurdle or a restriction on the child to secure or procure admission in any school.
You mentioned a very interesting point that the Parent-Teacher Association has something to do in this area.
Yes.
So if some parents of normal income see a child in their neighborhood who is really poor but not going to school, you are saying in fact that it is that parent who should say to the child, come on, I'll take you to the school.
Yes, of course. Of course. And it is not only such, it has to be put up on the public domain by the local authority.
Okay.
Now, when I refer to local authority, it is the Directorate of Education, which looks after the organization, administration and development of the school education in the state of Goa.
Right,
so it has to be put up on the public domain as to how many children of this age group exist, whether they are in school, whether they are out of school, whether they are school dropouts or whatever. So everything has to be listed out.
See now, I just want to change the subject a little bit. You know, we have this problem in Goa of many people, especially at the lower level, coming from Bihar, here, there and everywhere. Now, they have a language issue, okay? And our schools usually have English or Konkani or Marathi.
Yes, correct.
Now, how does the child adopt to this method of education when she doesn't know head or tail about the language?
Okay. Now, the state cannot impose mother tongue as a medium of instruction pertaining to the education that is pursued by the child.
Okay.
Now, that is considered as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in one of its decision in 2014. It's a Constitution Bench decision. The reason behind it is that each and every one of us have a fundamental right under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, which mentions about freedom of speech and expression. So it is freedom of speech and expression where you have a right to express yourself the way you want to. It is your choice to express. So there cannot be mother tongue of a state which the state can impose on a child. Using the mother tongue as a medium of instruction, you have to pursue education only in that particular field. So that's unconstitutional.
You must know that just a couple of years back, there was a huge uproar in the state
Yes.
about the medium of instruction.
Correct.
And the state was saying at that time, it should be Konkani or Marathi. And some people were saying, no, it should be English. Now you're saying there's a Supreme Court decision on this in 2014, which says that there is no such thing as imposing a language.
Yes.
That is correct.
Yes.
So, if the parents have all along been fighting that in Goa, that this language issue has to be dumped, it cannot be any more issue. That means now the state really has no authority to impose a language.
Yes, yes. Because we have different institutions actually all over India. Considering Goa itself, you have government institutions, you have aided institutions, you have private institutions, you also have specified category institutions, for example, Kendriya Vidyalaya. So, in that case, when we talk about linguistic minority institutions, they have the right to administer and pursue the education as per the choice, as per their choice under Indian Constitution. So the state cannot interfere. Similarly, when it comes up to the private institution, their right is also recognized under Indian Constitution pertaining to their right of occupation under Article 19(1)(g). So the state also cannot interfere with them. So that's why it was struck off by the Supreme Court, saying that there was a clear holding that imposing mother tongue as a medium of instruction is unconstitutional.
Wow, that's quite an interesting thing. So you heard it, parents. Now, if there are two things here. One is, if you see in your neighborhood a child who is not going to school and quite clearly she's or he is 6 years and above, it is our function to help those children get into school.
Correct.
Now, the other part is about the language issue. The government cannot and must not interfere in what language that particular school chooses to teach the language.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I just want to go on a slightly different note. There is this thing about midday meals.
Correct.
How did that come about?
Now, this midday meal was a nutritional program that was launched somewhere in 1990s, and then subsequently it was revised. The reason behind this nutritional program that was launched, that's to keep up to the nutritional status of the children. Not only that, it's like something that should lure children to be part of the school or the school environment, and that is what I as a teacher feel, that it's the tiffin that is given by the parents. So it's a meal that is given by the school. So it is more based upon not only the nutritional status but also retention of the students in the school. So this particular program was launched. One is because the nutritional status, second the retention, and the third is the student should complete their education. It's not that the midday meal is the only sole thing for the students to complete the elementary education, but it was thought that that could be part of the curriculum of the elementary education.
So technically, what you are saying is that 6 to 14, you wouldn't really finish your 12th standard or 10th standard.
It's 8th.
Yeah.
Yes, so it is from class 1 to class 8.
8.
So 6 to 14 would be class 1 to class 8.
So what happens thereafter?
This midday meal program is only for a specific age group.
Okay.
That is from the 6 to 14 years under your Right to Education Act so far. But however, the government can proceed to implement this particular scheme for a higher age group also. And the government actually is proceeding with this particular initiative and directives to implement the midday meal scheme after that particular age.
Okay. So you got that very clearly understood, that if a child is between 6 and 14, a midday meal is essential part of the administration of that particular school.
Yes.
Now, if the government so decides that even after the age of 14 they should provide food, then so be it. Is that's about
yes,
yeah,
yes,
that's right.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it is compulsory for the child to go for education, compulsory.
Yes.
Now, when you use that word compulsion, it means that we, as normal citizens of Goa, should not be seeing children on the streets, etc., etc. Have the citizens any role to play in this beside the parents of the schools?
Of course, yes. That's because when we refer to the Parents Teachers Association, or the Parents Teachers Association is an association which is more clearly specified under the School Education Act of 1984, which was also a legislation that was only applicable to Goa, Daman and Diu, and was assented to by the President in the year 1985. So we have this particular concept of right to education right from 1984. But when it comes up to Right to Education Act, we have something, instead of Parents Teachers Association, the name is like School Monitoring or School Monitoring or Managing Committees. So when we refer to such committees, we have community participation. So it is not only the representatives of the local authority, but the parents or the guardians also are a part of this committee. So there is no escape. You have to see to it that this right is implemented with full zeal and enthusiasm, so that we reach out to the poor of the poorest, to the person who is not able to avail of the benefit under Right to Education Act. And when we refer to this compulsion, it doesn't mean that you're coercing someone to pursue education. It's not forcing someone. This compulsion is clearly defined. It mentions about admission, your attendance in the school, and completion of elementary education. So these are the three areas which are focused.
Is there any thing happening from the central government point of view, especially in regard to Sarva Shiksha that the Prime Minister is talking about? Is there something happening in terms of skill development for children who have reached 8th standard and are now, say, age 14? Is there something that is done to help them get into some skill?
Okay, now this Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan was a very good program that was launched in order to support what is referred to as an education for all movement, which was a worldwide movement. And it was at the international level that this movement was on, and India had no escape but to accept the fact that somewhere at one point of time we have to have a legislation on right to education. So this Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, in order to support the EFA goal, that is the education for all goal, was launched in a period of 2000 to 2001, and it basically focuses on the quality education, the community participation at the elementary level. But however, that was just a national program, and the moot point that is projected pertaining to this program is that this program has to very much support the central legislation, that is Right to Education Act, for its effective implementation all over India. So now you have, I'm not saying that Right to Education Act supersedes this particular program, it runs parallel along with the Right to Education Act, but any action that is taken under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan has to be supportive in terms of your Right to Education Act. Pertaining to the point, Mr. Kuna, which you raised about skill education. Now the skill education concept is there more at the higher educational level. Right. Now, no doubt we have subjects like music and painting and drawing and crafts for the children at this particular age. But when we talk about higher education, more of vocational studies, the skill education in reality comes into picture. Now, for the basic learning, of course, the student should be trained for it, because you never know which particular choice a child may opt.
Exactly, that's right.
But of course, that's a duty that is cast on the state. I'm not saying the state totally, but the school, the teachers, to see to it that the child develops wholly in all fields.
Right. See, the Prime Minister has been saying, and particularly during the election campaigns, etc., that we are pushing a lot for people to come here to manufacture things. Okay, and I know this is not directly related to right to education, but he is saying basically that we are wanting private enterprise to come to our country, but we don't have the skill for the private enterprise to employ people to do that job. So to what extent do these poor children who have passed now the 8th standard can be trained to work say as a fitter or a welder or something like that? Is there any vision for this particular situation?
Of course there is a vision, and it is very much there on the papers, but then it has to be effectively implemented in that particular direction. And the more focus, that is what I mentioned, is at the higher educational level. So it's like once you clear your 11th, 12th standard, then where you proceed or what kind of study you take, there is more focus on this particular skill development.
No, I thought it is the other way around. I thought the moment you finish your 8th, and say you are one of those students who likes to fix a motorbike or a car or whatever, he straight
For
away
example,
put
your ITI education
that's right.
or whatever.
Would that be a free thing for such kids?
It would be, and it can be, but
it isn't right now.
It isn't right, I'm not saying, but probably as you have said earlier, at the 8th standard, they could be trained at the basic level.
That's right, yeah.
Pertaining to this particular study, and probably 9th and 10th, they could really focus more on this. One thing to add is when we talk about the education, actually it should be both way rounds. The teachers of the school should not feel that it's a burden on them that we cannot expel a student. This is what the Act specifies. They should not feel a burden that we cannot detain a student and he doesn't know anything. And on the other hand, I'm not saying, I'm not blaming only the school or the teachers, but the parents or the guardian should also keep a note of what their child is up to or where their child is moving further. So it should be both way around, whereupon the child gets overall development without any kind of fear or pressure. So it should not be such that you're going to the school out of pressure and I'm compelled to study. So if this particular notion which is there is removed from the child and there is a psychological development of a child, then probably we could succeed and proceed.
It is a very tough call, isn't it? It's a
of
very
course,
tough
but
call.
it is not difficult. It is tough, but it is not difficult, because as teachers, I feel that, we should nurture a child at any stage whatsoever. And this is a role of a teacher. I'm not saying that a primary level or a primary stage, the teacher is supposed to do that. The parents also have got a role, but on the other hand, the teacher should also be supportive in developing a child. And of course, now in 2019, this particular year, there's an amendment that has been brought about to the Right to Education Act, which says that at the 5th standard and at the 8th standard, a child can be detained. So there will be a regular examination, and if they don't clear the examination, the child will be trained for a period of 2 months.
Okay.
And then there's going to be a re-examination for them at the 5th as well as the 8th standard. And say supposing they don't clear, then it is up to the state government to implement a law whereupon a child can be detained.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that's a new amendment that has been brought about, which is a very good thing, because most of the states in India were facing a lot of problem with the children. We talk about right to education, elementary education, admission, attendance and completion.
Yeah.
So both ways it should be, both should be happy. The teacher should not be burdened that, okay, this particular child knows nothing, but he clears one after the other. And on the other hand also, the child should not feel unhappy saying that I am detained in the same class.
It's going to be a very challenging task.
Yes, it's a very challenging
So
task.
there we have it now. You have heard Ms. Shruti Kamat Dalal tell us all about what this right to education is all about. Basically, it's compulsory education, free education for all children between 6 to 14. It is necessary that there should be no capitation fees or any fees of any kind for that child to get admitted, whether it's a private school, it's a minority school, any school. So the child has to be admitted if the parents bring the child to that school. So, and it is expected of us as citizens and us as part of the parents' council of in the schools to help our children to come to the school and give them not only the encouragement, but sometimes even a little tuitions to help them come up to the level of the rest of the school. So thank you so much for being with us and explaining this particular law, because many people don't know about it. And in our new series, we are trying to get people to know the law and also use it for the benefit of not only themselves, but society as a whole. So thank you so much for your time.